I'm Don Dahler, and this is 2020 in Touch. On Friday, we brought you a murder mystery we've been following for years. An Illinois woman named Julie Rea-Harper was serving a 65-year sentence for stabbing to death her 10-year-old son as he lay sleeping. From the very beginning, she insisted she was innocent and that she, in fact, had struggled with the intruder who killed her son. After her story aired on 2020, Julie Rea-Harper got a new trial and a second chance to prove she was not the killer. That's where Lynn Scherer picks up the story.
It is summer 2006. In the small town of Carlisle, Illinois, on what would have been Joel Kirkpatrick's 19th birthday, his mother sits in the hushed courtroom facing first-degree murder charges for the second time for killing her only child.
How difficult was it for you to be in court knowing it was his actual birthday?
He was right there with me.
Did you consider the possibility that you would be found guilty again and have to go back to prison? Did you think it could happen again?
I knew it could.
But could she have imagined that the person who might save her was a serial killer on death row in Texas?
Do you believe that Tommy Lynn Sells murdered your son?
There's no question in my mind.
Julie's hopes rest on her new legal dream team, who, in time and resources, will spend the equivalent of $1 million in her defense.
The first trial, there was essentially no defense, and the prosecution was allowed to run roughshod over the rules of evidence, over the defense, over justice.
Julie's lawyer, Ron Safer, says her first defense attorney was in over his head, and that the judge wrongly allowed damaging testimony from her vindictive ex-husband. He believes the deck was stacked against Julie from the beginning.
These police officers decided 30 seconds into this investigation that Julie had done it. They had who they believed was the perpetrator, and then they shaped the evidence to that end.
Did the police ever look for evidence of the intruder that Julie claims came into the house that night?
Never. They never did. There were fibers on the scene. They never collected them. Why not? They didn't want to know. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They say there's no evidence of a third person. They didn't look for the evidence. They didn't even fingerprint the scene.
Safer also argues that if Julie had stabbed her son to death, his blood would have drenched her clothing.
This was a bloody scene. There was blood everywhere, spatter in all directions. The T-shirt that Julie was wearing was virtually pristine.
Even more persuasive than the evidence, for the first time, Julie herself finally has the chance to tell her story in her own words.
Well, she cried a lot during this trial, and there wasn't much crying, if any, in the first trial.
Are you saying it was an act?
I'm saying it seems that she did an awful lot of it this time, and at strategic times.
The prosecutor calls your whole testimony an act. He says that you knew what to say, when to cry, how to manipulate the jury. What do you say to that?
If I were that talented, surely I would have done that during the first trial.
And in this trial, jurors finally hear an answer to the question, if not Julie, who could have killed her son? The transcript of our 2020 interview with serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells is read aloud.
I just went into a dark room and started cutting, stabbing.
What does it do to you to hear him describe that scene?
I'm a mother. What would it do to you?
Tommy Lynn Sells has since changed his story a number of times. But for Julie's team, he makes the possibility of an intruder very real.
Whether he confessed to this crime, whether he recanted to this crime, it showed the darkness of the soul of a serial murderer. It answered the question for the jury, who does this? This man does this.
When the case goes to the jury, Julie can't help but remember that the first time around, it took only 5 hours to convict her.
What was going through your mind while you were waiting for that verdict?
I prayed that they would see the truth.
This time, the jury takes more than twice as long to make up its mind.
The foreperson read the verdict of not guilty.
It was over. Finally. Finally. It was over.
Did you faint?
I fell. Yeah.
I tried to catch her, missed, almost tumbled down on top of her, picked her up, turned her to her husband, and that was nice.
And I just felt like Joel was right there with me, and he was just so happy.
There's no way that she could have done this to her own son. No way.
Her son's gone. Her whole world's shattered.
I almost wanted to cry with her. I mean, my heart was just beating a mile a minute, and we freed this woman.
Astonishingly, prosecutor Ed Parkinson, who has led the state's case for 2 trials, avoids hearing the verdict.
It was your case, and this is a woman you'd been prosecuting for the better part of 9 years, and you didn't hang around for the verdict?
I had a bad feeling about it. The other prosecutor, and he went in and I didn't. One jury got it right and one got it wrong, in my opinion.
Bottom line, does it take more than $1 million to prove you're innocent in America today?
If you have prosecutors who are willing to go on a crusade, to ignore the evidence, who are unaccountable, who are unchecked, then yes, it takes $1 million to even those scales. Today is a day for celebrating justice. Today is a day to begin a healing process, a mourning process that has been delayed for 9 years.
Justice delayed, but finally found. As Julie struggles to put the pieces of her life back together, her memories of Joel provide some solace.
He knew I loved him more than anything else in the world. He's with me every day, wherever I am.
I'm Don Daler. For all of us at 2020, we're in touch, so you be in touch.